Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Starking AM0350. This watch is available from Starking official store on AliExpress for €88. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So the watch comes in this cardboard watch box. One removes the tray from the sleeve, and the watch sits in the base of the tray inside a foam cutout panel, as one would expect. Although basic, it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping from any damage, and I think it's perfectly acceptable to use a basic cardboard watch box, bearing in mind this is a low tier price point piece at only €88. With regards to the items, this is the international warranty card, and the watch is covered by a 12-month international warranty. Now, there's no owner's instruction manual, which is a disappointment, and I would like to see Starking introduce an owner's instruction manual to detail the operation of the movement used, which is the Starking Caliber SK1868 automatic. This is the tag, and on the reverse we have the full reference number of the piece, which is abbreviated to AM0350. One also gets this two-pronged spring bar tool, as you can see. And lastly, one also gets a Starking branded microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth, irrespective of the price point of a piece. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Starking AM0350. We have a 41mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 49.5mm, a thickness of 13.7mm. The integrated lug width at the widest point of the integrated silicone rubber strap is 24mm, and the silicone rubber strap tapers from 24 at the lugs down to the 2-button push deployant. So the deployant clasp is made from solid 316L grade stainless steel, which is brushed satin finish and then black PVD coated. And as you can see, beneath the black PVD coating, we have the Starking emblem and Starking logo text engraved to a good standard. Nice heavy gauge of metal to the 2-button push deployant, and the two triggers have a nice firm resistance. So one presses the two triggers and that deploys the deployant clasp, as you can see. So the deployant clasp is solid 316L grade stainless steel and PVD coated black throughout. As you can see, the quality of the PVD coating is very good. They haven't missed any areas. It's entirely coated on the top side, underside and flanks in black PVD. It snaps shut with a nice positive click. The left hand and right hand portions engage very well. Nice positive click, and the end of the silicone rubber strap engages with the two keepers. Now, one detail I like, and I've referred to this in other watch reviews, is the first keeper is secured into position with two nubs either side of the silicone rubber strap, and the first keeper engages with the two nubs, it sits between them, and that prevents it sliding out of position. So very good attention to detail. The second keeper floats up and down the strap to get it into the correct position. So I like the use of the two nubs either side on the first keeper, and then we have the second keeper floating. Now, the silicone rubber strap is very soft and supple. This is clearly an homage to the Richard Mille, and it follows the same design as Richard Mille straps because it has cut out vents which allow for sweat and perspiration to wick away from the wrist and air circulation underneath the strap. So it's a very well made soft silicone rubber strap, although it's not going to be as durable as FKM fluorine, which is stiffer but more durable. So as you can see, it's integrated into the lugs, very nice fit inside the head of the piece, and underneath we have conventional spring bars, so it's easy to remove the strap if you want to change it for an alternative colour. Right, so I'll just close the deployant. So with regards to the rest of the specification, we have a curved tonneau Hardlex crystal. Now, this is a clear cost-cutting measure because they've used Hardlex as a compromise between mineral crystal and sapphire crystal. I appreciate this is €88 within the low tier. It's an inexpensive piece, but however, it's a clear cost-cutting measure to use Hardlex. Now, Hardlex is chemically treated mineral crystal, used by Seiko, for example, and really it's not as hard and scratch resistant as sapphire. I would prefer to see sapphire at this price point, €88. Now, the negative of using the Hardlex tonneau crystal is unfortunately there's no AR coating on the underside, and as you can see it is highly reflective. There's a lot of glare and it does reflect like a mirror, so they really should have used sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside rather than using Hardlex. Now, on the reverse, on the case back, it's glazed with mineral crystal, and that's acceptable because on the reverse of a piece one doesn't need sapphire crystal. It doesn't need to be scratch resistant. It's not prone to being scuffed and scratched like the front of the piece with a tonneau crystal. The screwed down exhibition case back is solid 316L grade stainless steel, glazed with mineral crystal, and we have 4 screws, 1 in each of the corners. And it's got a nice flat profile to it, but this could be further enhanced if they'd curved the exhibition case back and curved the mineral crystal, because that would mean it would wrap around the wrist better. Having a flat case back means it doesn't curve around the wrist as well, although it does do a good job of displaying the movement used, which is the Starking caliber SK1868 automatic. Now, they have made the correct decision by mirror polishing it rather than black PVD coating it, because this is an area that's going to rub against the skin on the wrist, and therefore that would rub off the black PVD coating. But by having it mirror polished, the coating isn't going to rub off. So they have made the right decision by not PVD coating the exhibition case back as per the rest of the piece. With regards to the crown, it's got a hexagonal profile to it and a red rubber O-ring around a groove, and as you can see, it's also black PVD coated to a good standard, and beneath the PVD coating we have the Starking emblem engraved, so it's done to a very good standard, and it does a good job of coating the 316L grade stainless steel. Now, it's a push-pull crown rather than screw-down crown, which is a cross-cutting measure, but however, this is a daily wear piece, which is acceptable. But the disappointing aspect is it's only 30 metres water resistance. Now, I would prefer to see a minimum of 50. With a push-pull crown, it's possible to gain 100 metres of hermetic seal. For example, on the Seiko 5KX, that has a push-pull crown, but that's 100 metres. Really, 30 is not acceptable, even for a daily wear piece. 50 is the industry standard, and I think 30 metres is just another cost-cutting measure. It means that there's only one rubber O-ring inside the crown, and I really think that they need to upgrade this to a 50 metre minimum water resistance, even if it uses a push-pull crown. So let's test the push-pull crown execution. So in the closed position, as it's a push-pull crown rather than screw-down crown, we can manually wind the Starking caliber SK1868 automatic to top it up to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. Now, it's not pleasant to manually wind, it feels gritty and it doesn't feel smooth. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up, but it feels like there's resistance, there's friction in it, and it feels notchy. It feels like the crown is clicking as one rotates it and the gears are winding up the mainspring, so it's not as smooth to manually wind as a Miyota 8215 or alternatively Seiko NH35A, for example, which you'll be familiar with. So it doesn't feel good to manually wind, although this is an automatic, so you could wear it for 8 to 12 hours per day, and that will wind it to 40 hours if you don't want to manually wind it. So no date complication. Pulling it out to the first click position on the crown is the final click position. It's the time setting position, and as you can see, we're now in the time setting position. Now, the negative of the caliber SK1868 automatic is if you look at the lightning bolt second hand, which is like a Milgauss second hand, it doesn't stop dead. So this movement doesn't have hacking. One cannot set the time precisely to the second. It continues to run even in the time setting position. Light resistance to the gearing, but however, we do have some back play clockwise and anti-clockwise. For example, when I rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, there isn't an immediate response from the minute hand. There is some back play both clockwise and anti-clockwise. If you look closely at the crown, you can see I'm now rotating it clockwise and anti-clockwise, but the minute hand isn't responding immediately. There is a slight back play. One has to rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise a little more to get the minute hand to move. So there is significant back play in it, and I dislike that about the movement. Pushing it back in reinstates the 30 metres of hermetic seal, and as I've discussed, it doesn't have hacking, so the lightning bolt second hand continues to run regardless. Now, with regards to the case back, it is very well executed. It does show off the caliber SK1868. We've got a skeletonized rotor, which is well finished, but the movement is undecorated with the exception of the blued screws in the movement. So I think they could do a better job. It's a skeletonized movement, which of course does work well with this skeletonized piece, but I really think they could improve the decoration and add some pelage finishing to it to add interest to it. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, both halves of the deployment do snap shut with a nice positive click. And as you can see, I'm able to now fit an index finger underneath the deployment and strap, so it is loose. I'm in the final hole of the strap, and as you can see, it's slightly too short. If they did extend the the silicone rubber strap by 1/2 inch, I would be able to engage the end of the strap with the 2 keepers, but for the majority of collectors with a 6 to 7.5 inch wrist, this silicone rubber strap will fit you no problem whatsoever. I'm now in the final hole, and as you can see, this strap is nearly long enough to engage in the first keeper, and that is with an index finger of thickness underneath the strap. So if I moved it up by 2 notches, one could get the end of the strap in the first or potentially second keeper. So it's long enough for the majority of collectors. Now, with regards to the proportions, 41mm, so it does have wrist presence on wrist, and also it's 13.7, so it will actually slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts, and that is a surprise because having a tonneau case, one would expect this to be in excess of 14mm, but it is only 13.7, which is very good for an automatic. That's the kind of thickness one would expect with a quartz powered piece. So very low profile, bearing in mind it has a tonneau case. Now the lug to lug is 49.5, so it's slightly too long. I think they should have reduced this to 48, which is the perfect lug to lug measurement, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. At 49.5 it's going to be too long if you have a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches. This is clearly best suited to collectors with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches. Now as you can see, the Hardlex crystal, which lacks AR coating, is highly reflective, and they really should have added clear AR coating and used sapphire crystal. When one tilts the piece at an oblique angle, one also gets the distortion effect because it is a curved tonneau crystal, but as you can see there is a slight magnification and distortion effect, and I think they could improve upon this by using a thinner tonneau crystal rather than using one which is thick, because as you can see it magnifies and distorts, so the clarity and the legibility isn't good. And if this did have AR coating, that would improve that, but as you can see it's very shiny and reflective. The skeletonized dial is actually easy to register the skeletonized hands and read the time, because we do have applied indices and we also have an applied 12 and 6 Arabic numerals, which does give orientation to the dial, so it is easy to read. But I think they've made a mistake using the red lightning bolt second hand, because this isn't a Milgauss homage and it really doesn't fit with a Richard Mille homage. So comfortable piece to wear, feel good factor is good, but it really doesn't feel like a piece you'd want to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day, because even on the silicone rubber strap, this is 105 grams, and that's actually quite heavy for a 41mm on a rubber strap. I think that really they should reduce the thickness of the piece to circa 13mm and shorten the case down to 48, and that would reduce the heft. And also if they used a thinner tonneau sapphire crystal versus this thick Hardlex tonneau crystal, that would also reduce the heft to below 100 grams and therefore make it less top heavy and more balanced. Now looking at the left hand flank, you can see they have engraved Starking. Personally, I dislike when brands engrave their brand name, their brand logo on the left hand flank, and I think that they should have just used longitudinal brushed satin finishing on the flank without Starking being engraved. On the right hand flank we have horizontal grooves engraved, and that looks more aesthetically pleasing, so they could have done the same thing on the left hand flank, just had the grooves engraved rather than Starking. And having said that, the quality of the black PVD coating on the bezel is good, the flanks and also the underside to the head of the piece and in between the lugs. So they have done a good job of PVD coating it, and the head of the piece is brushed satin finish, then PVD coated, so it's got a nice matte finish to it. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, this is very disappointing because they haven't applied any Lume whatsoever to the skeletonized hands. They've infilled the skeletonized hands partially with red paint. What they should have done was partially infilled them with C3 Luminova. And as you can see, looking at the applied indices, this is clearly C3 Luminova and not Super Luminova, which is a cost-cutting measure. Now, I appreciate this is €88 within the low tier, and therefore there has to be some cost-cutting measures to make this viable to retail at €88. But not having any Lume whatsoever on the skeletonized hands is wholly unacceptable, because there's no point having C3 Luminova on the applied indices with no lume on the hands. One cannot read the time in the dark. The only lume they have put is on the arrowhead tip of the lightning bolt second hand, and one doesn't need to see the second hand tip sweeping around. One needs to see the hour and the minute hand. So this is a clear mistake. It's a cost-cutting measure. And the other thing is they haven't loomed the 12 and 6 applied Arabic numerals. What they should have done was just used applied indices and loomed the applied indices at 12 and 6 o'clock, because what we've got is a deletion of the indices with the Arabic numerals. So this really is a mistake, and they need to rectify this. They need to loom the hands and also loom the Arabic numerals. Right, so let's discuss the movement used. So this uses the Starking Caliber SK1868 automatic. Now the negative of the movement is its unidirectional winding, and what that means is the rotor, although it can spin bidirectionally, clockwise and anti-clockwise, the rotor has to spin anti-clockwise in order to wind the movement. When the rotor spins clockwise, it has negligible winding effect, so it's not as efficient as a bidirectional winding rotor, and which could rotate clockwise and anti-clockwise and have the same winding effect. It has 25 joules, it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. Now it has hand winding, which is a useful complication, but it doesn't have hacking, and it has a 40-hour power reserve. This one is running at plus 12 seconds per day, which is fast. Now I don't know what the stated accuracy of the Starking SK1868 automatic is, because they don't detail that. Starking don't reveal that, and I've looked up the specification of the caliber and I can't find the stated accuracy online, so one can assume it's not an accurate movement, because if it were, they would be proud to state, for example, it's between plus or minus 10 seconds per day. So I don't know what the stated accuracy is, but I can tell you this one, when fully wound to its maximum 40 hours, is 12 seconds, so it is running fast. I think they could do a better job of regulating the Caliber SK1868 that they're using, and regulate it to at least within plus or minus 10 seconds per day, which would be more reasonable. Plus 12 really is too fast. So the movement is undecorated, with the exception of the blued screws and the skeletonized rotor. And I think that they should use a better quality of movement, such as the NH38, because I appreciate this is a piece without a date complication. They've obviously elected to use the SK1868 because it's a skeletonized movement, and this is a skeletonized piece. As you can see, we don't have a dial. The dial is skeletonized, and the idea is one can see through the Hardlex crystal to the mineral crystal in the exhibition case back. And I appreciate it's a Richard Mille homage, but I really think that the NH38 would have been a better choice, a higher grade of movement, than using the Starking Caliber SK1868. In terms of reliability, it's really unproven, so I can't tell you it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement, because I honestly don't know what the reliability of the SK1868 is. And I think that really it's a question mark over the movements, because it hasn't been in production long enough and hasn't been in use long enough really to say yes it's reliable or no it's unreliable. It's a relatively new movement, so I think that there are better options than the SK1868. It's a clear cost-cutting measure to use their own movement rather than using a Seiko NH38, for example, or a Miyota 8215. So OK movements, plus 12 seconds per day isn't very accurate. It does have hand winding, doesn't have hacking. I do like this, it runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and 4 Hz, because that does give the lightning bolt second hand a smoother sweep than 3 Hz movements such as Seiko movements and the Miyota 8215, for example, which runs at 3 Hz and 21,600 vibrations per hour. So the second hand does have a nice 4 Hz smooth sweep to it, but it's a shame that it doesn't have hacking, because it is always nice to stop a movement dead and set the time precisely to the second. With regards to the legibility, the applied indices are highly reflective, so they do register very well with the mirror polished skeletonized hands, but as I've detailed in the Lume test, they really have made a mistake by infilling the ends of the skeletonized hour and minute hand with red paint rather than using C3 Super Luminova. They've just used C3 Luminova on the applied indices. We don't have any Luminova whatsoever on the silver mirror polished 12 and 6 Arabic numerals. So the legibility is very poor, the Lume performance was very poor on the applied indices, and the skeletonized hands would look better if they were fully infilled with C3 Super Luminova. So clear cost-cutting measures with the Hardlex crystal, no AR coating, and the poor quality Luminova. Right, so lastly I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meets 2 criteria. it should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So €88 is the current price point, and I think that this is poor quality and poor value at €88. There are better options. If you want a Richard Mille homage, I think the Sega design is a better option. Yes, it's more expensive, but the quality is better. It uses a sapphire crystal, and also the quality of the Superluminova is higher grade, and also has a better quality crown, because this is only 30 meters of hermetic seal. And really that is wholly unacceptable, regardless of this being €88. 50 meters is the minimum industry standard, and ideally 100 meters, even for a push-pull crown. 30 meters is a clear cost-cutting measure, and I really think it's not good enough. Hardlex is a cost-cutting measure, and the Luminova is a cost-cutting measure, and I think there are just too many cost-cutting measures with this piece, even at €88, to consider it good quality and good value. I'm going to declare it poor quality and poor value. There are better options for Richard Mille homages. So I hope you've liked my review of the Starking AM0350. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.